Yeah, in the last video I covered threshold and ratio when it comes to compressors, and now I'm going to be covering attack and release, which is kind of tricky to understand because you know, some people have their own opinions on it, but I'm just going to explain it the way I understand it, or the way that I learned it. Is that the attack is once the threshold, or once the sound goes past the threshold and it triggers the compressor to come on, the attack is the time frame it takes for the compressor to reduce it by its ratio. So say you have a ratio of I don't know, say like ratio of 2, and your attack is, you know, somewhere like 44, 40, or 50. I think it's in milliseconds, but it would take 50 milliseconds for the compressor to reduce it. You know, if it's over 2 dB, it'll bring it back by 1 dB, but within the time frame of 50 milliseconds. But if it's at, you know, 0 or a small number like this one's 0.1, that means as soon as the sound comes through, it's gonna start adding a compression to it. But for a really good way for you to understand is that I already set up a drum track. And a drum track is a really good way to explain attack and how it affects the sound. I'm gonna let me reset all the knobs, and I'll start the drum track. And as I play with it, you'll hear the sound change. Like, you know what I'm saying? As you can hear it now, it's regular. It's got a lot of punch. You know, it's heavy. And for example's sake, I'm gonna make the ratio, you know, at like an 8:1. And I'm gonna make the attack as quick as possible, and listen to it as I pull down the threshold. You see how it's muffling the sound, and it's eating up the meat, the beat itself. It's almost like it doesn't exist when you use too much threshold. And as I bring it back, then it's like the life of the sound comes back at the same time. Now, if I use a longer attack, you know, which means it'll give it more time for it to react and get to the ratio. Listen to it now. It's almost as if part of the knock behind the sound gets through. And if you use an extreme setting, it's almost like it doesn't really, you know, pretty much useless at that point. But yeah, that's basically the attack. Now the release, on the other hand, the release is how long it takes for the compressor to get the volume back at its original decibel. Like, if you have a really short release, then that means as soon as the compression hits and it's done, it'll return back to its normal state quick as possible. But if you use a longer release, then it pretty much just holds on to the sound for as long as possible, and it never really gets back to where it originally was. So for the same example, I'll use the drum. Let me get it going again. Pull down the threshold a little bit, and this is with a quick release and a, you know, average attack. You see how it bounces back right away, but if you pull a release, you see how it stays kind of squashed down, and it never really gets back to where it was. But then if you pull it back, it tries to respond a lot quicker than a higher number because it's a quick release. And if you play with these attack and release settings, that's how you're able to create a pumping effect and a breathing effect. And it's used a lot like in hip hop and techno and a lot of different genres. Just to give you an idea. But yeah, that's my explanation on attack and release. Hope it makes sense. And I'll continue on my discussion on compression in the next video. Peace.